millions through her fitness programs, books, and digital platforms. Best known for her role on The Biggest Loser, Michaels promotes a balanced approach to fitness and nutrition, emphasizing long-term health and self-improvement. Ms. Michaels.
Thank you. We all wrote these speeches in a silo, and yet you're hearing us all say very similar things. I almost feel bad bashing you guys over the head with this one more time. But Callie put this panel together meticulously, and one thing he asks very often is, where's the outrage? Where is the outrage? So maybe by hitting you guys over and over, it will really piss you off.
Yes, yes.
So here I go. During the time that we've been given to speak with you today, roughly 800 people will die of an obesity-related disease that was completely preventable. And it's not just their loss that should elicit your devastation and your outrage, but the immense suffering of those left behind by those gone too soon. And it should also go without saying the ways in which obesity robs our nation of able bodies to defend our freedom, robs our nation of the brightest and best, as childhood obesity is linked to lower academic performance, and robs our nation of economic vitality with a financial impact estimated to range from $500 billion to $1 trillion annually when you combine direct healthcare costs, lost productivity, and social burdens. Our role as the dominant player on the world stage is being forfeited. My name is Jillian Michaels. I am a health advocate, a fitness expert, and a nutritionist. I have no political alliance because health transcends partisanship and ideology. Unlike the majority of issues I imagine people in Washington contend with on a daily basis, this one is not nuanced. It's black and white, it's right and wrong, it's good against evil. The experts accompanying me today are sharing with you the staggering depth of corruption big corporations engage in to transform Americans as young as possible into fat, sick, and nearly dead cash cows. They're terrifying you with skyrocketing statistics of infertility, autism, early onset cancer diagnosis, type 2 diabetes, and a host of other horrors. They're detailing for you what needs to change and how to change it. I've traditionally worked outside the system, trying to empower people to help themselves instead of waiting for lifeboats that may never arrive. But that said, it's become harder and harder for people to take agency and enact change for the reasons we're laying out for you today. And ultimately, I have discovered that despite my best efforts and the efforts of people here like me, Americans need systemic help, and they need it urgently. We sit here before you today to set the stage, establish the stakes from firsthand perspectives, and hopefully inspire you to act upon some of the suggestions provided. I aim to do this with a story about one of the lucky ones, one that escaped the spiderweb of corporate rapacity, a story about me. Today, I'm widely known as an individual synonymous with fitness, but this wasn't always the case. In 1974, the year that I was born, less than 10% of our population was overweight or obese. And prior to that, over the course of all human existence, being overweight or obese was considered extremely unusual and rare. And somehow they weren't holding panels, by the way. Nobody needed a panel to figure it out. But by the late 70s, suddenly the rate in which our population began to grow in size became supersonic. By the time I was 13, in 1987, I was already 170 pounds, at only 5'1", officially, clinically obese. And from the year I was born to the year I turned 21, obesity rates had tripled. Today, in 2024, as we've said now numerous times, it's estimated that roughly 75% of our adult population is obese or overweight. The entirety, almost, of my generation, along with the two generations that followed, have fallen victim to America's unchecked obesity crisis and over 170 comorbidities that go along with it. I don't know about you, but I've watched my friends jabbing themselves every day with fertility drugs, praying for a pregnancy, my friends getting up at the crack of dawn to get radiated where the lump was found in their breast, my friends swallowing fistfuls of pills to manage their debilitating anxiety and depression. The decades between 1980 and now didn't beget a genetic quantum leap in which our DNA inexplicably mutated to make American bodies expand and fall ill at an unprecedented pace. And while Gen X, Millennials, and Gen Z have our problems, 75% of us are not stupid, weak, or lazy. So hopefully you are wondering, what has happened to us? And we're here to tell you. In the late 70s and the early 80s, a sinister series of events converged to change food and subsequently health in America indefinitely. A plague that crept like a fog while we slept, literally and figuratively, blindly trusting that the powers that be would never betray us. I mean, it seemed unthinkable to question whether a corporation would poison us for profit. I mean, the widespread assumption, at least when I was a kid, was that they were acting on our behalf. They wanted to make food, more affordable and more convenient. But it was this betrayal of trust that allowed them to insidiously infiltrate every part of our lives. Home-cooked meals became fast food value meals. Libraries and bookstores with no food or drink policies installed cafes selling 500-calorie coffee drinks and pastries. Eggs became heart disease cholesterol bombs, and Honey Nut Cheerios got labeled heart healthy. The default human condition in the 21st century is obese by design. Specific, traceable forms of what's referred to as structural violence are created by the catastrophic quartet of big farming, big food, big pharma, and big insurance. They systematically corrupt every institution of trust, which has led to the global spread of obesity and disease. Dysfunctional and destructive agricultural legislation like the Farm Bill, which favors high-yield, genetically engineered crops like corn and soy, leading to the proliferation of empty calories, saturated with all of these toxins that we've been talking about today for 3 hours, and it seems like we can never say enough about it. And then this glut of cheap calories provides a boon to the food industry giants. They just turn it into a bounty of ultra-processed, factory-assembled foods and beverages strategically engineered to undermine your society and foster your dependence like nicotine and cocaine. So we literally cannot eat just one. And to ensure that you don't, added measures are taken to inundate our physical surroundings. We're literally flooded with food and we are brainwashed by ubiquitous cues to eat, whether it's the Taco Bell advertisement on the side of a bus as you drive to work or the vending machine at your kid's school. There is no place we spend time that's left untouched. They're omnipresent. They commandeer the narrative with $30 billion worth of advertising dollars, commercials marketed to kids with mega celebrities eating McDonald's and loving it. Sponsored dietitians paid to promote junk food on social media, utilizing anti-diet body positivity messaging like derail the shame in relation to fast food consumption. Time magazine brazenly issuing a defense of ultra-processed foods on their cover with the title, "What if ultra-processed foods aren't as bad as you think?" And when people like us try to sound the alarm, they ensure that we are swiftly labeled as anti-science, fat shamers, and even racists. They launch aggressive lobbying efforts to influence you, our politicians, to shape policy, secure federal grants, tax credits, subsidy dollars, which proliferates their product and heavily pads their bottom line. They have created a perfect storm in which pharmaceuticals that cost hundreds, if not thousands per month, like Ozempic, that are linked to stomach paralysis, pancreatitis, and thyroid cancer, can actually surge. This reinforces a growing dependence on medical interventions to manage weight in a society where systemic change in food production and consumption is desperately needed and also very possible. These monster corporations have mastered the art of distorting the research, influencing the policy, buying the narrative, engineering the environment, and manipulating consumer behavior. So given all of this, the question becomes, how did I escape? I mean, I still remember the lunches my mom would pack me as a little kid. I mean, it was such innocence and love, and she had no idea that my kindergarten lunchbox contained at least 50, now I'm thinking it's far more, carcinogens, solvents, emulsifiers, colorings, preservatives. I have the list. I'm going to skip it because we did it already. Frankenfoods like juice boxes with no juice. Processed lunch meat held together by meat glue. I mean, as a tween, I would sit on the couch after school, just numbingly inhaling Cheetos and Oreos in front of the TV. There was no such thing as mealtimes. And I could stuff myself endlessly and never feel full. Buckets of KFC at night for our family dinner because it was quick, convenient, affordable. And I remember I would lay in bed comatose. It was a lifestyle equivalent to a death sentence, but we never questioned it because we were just a family that was simply attuned to the culture. So it should come as no surprise that by that tender age of 13, I was obese, failing in school, and becoming increasingly depressed and despondent. And my mom began to feel helpless. She spoke to my pediatrician and a child psychiatrist, both of whom suggested she medicate me on Prozac and Ritalin, but she was watching many of her friends' kids on this exact same protocol, and they weren't improving. My mom was becoming progressively desperate to help me, and then fate intervened. She met another mom whose child had been thriving since joining a local martial arts studio, and she signed me up the next day. And my sensei was smart enough to recognize the ways in which America's youth were being routinely poisoned, and he cared enough to create an environment where myself and the other students under his wing were educated, insulated, and nourished to become our best selves. I went on to get my black belt and become a trainer and a nutritionist myself with the intention of waking up the others and giving them the same tools that he gave me. And while I have been fortunate enough to pull many back from the edge, over the course of my 30-year career, I have lost just as many, if not more, than I have saved. I have watched them slip through my fingers. Mothers that orphaned their children, husbands that widowed their wives. I have even watched parents forced to suffer the unthinkable loss of their adult children. There are not words to express the sadness I have felt and the fury, knowing that they were literally sacrificed at the altar of unchecked corporate greed. Most Americans are simply too financially strained, psychologically drained, and physically addicted to break free without a systemic intervention. Attempting to combat the status quo and the powers that be is beyond swimming upstream. It is like trying to push a rampaging river that's infested with piranhas. After years of trying to turn the tide, I submit that the powers that be are simply too powerful for us to take on alone. I implore the people here that shape the policy to take a stand. The buck must stop with you while the American people tend to the business of raising children and participating in the workforce to ensure that the wheels of our country go around. They tapped you to stand watch. They tapped you to stand guard. We must hold these bad actors accountable. And I presume the testimonials you heard today moved you. Digest them, discuss them, and act upon them. Because if this current trend is allowed to persist, the stakes will be untenable. We are in the middle of an extinction level event. The American people need help. They need heroes. And people of Washington, your constituents chose you to be their champion. Please be the change. Thank you.
So again, Jillian, that shows our appreciation for all your advocacy and your passion. I know Callie would have a number of different suggestions legislatively, but I'd ask you just, if there was one particular piece of legislation or one thing that we could do here in Washington, what would it be?
Get rid of Citizens United and get the money out of politics.
Okay.
Go, Callie. This is your area. He's like, nah. That's why you do what you do.
Any other questions for Jillian?
Well, I think Jillian should be in charge of the next president's. We should bring the presidential fitness standards back and get kids moving. And I think Jillian's been involved with that with President Clinton, President Obama. We need you for the next one. We need to bring that back, Jillian. And any other ideas on how we can systemically get this?
We just have to, as RFK says, we've got to care more about our children. And he says than hating each other, but also than the money. I mean, how much money? When is it enough? Really, I think all the times that I turn down opportunities to make a little extra money, because when I'm on my deathbed, I don't want this on my conscience. I don't want these regrets. I want to be proud of the life that I've lived. And that means we got to make some sacrifices and take a stand.
Well, on this topic, as you were talking, I just want to acknowledge the many staffers and healthcare policy staffers, particularly in this room, who are